Welcome to the Montana Museum of Art and Culture. Thank you for coming out this evening. It's always important to start with those things that we are grateful for. And so, and of course, the first gratitude is owed to our predecessors and the ancestors and the people who were here long before any of us were here. So we gratefully acknowledge that we are in Salish and Kalispel Aboriginal territories, and we are grateful for the wisdom and the guidance that they have offered for millennia, and for their place on this land, taking care of this place that we now call home. And so, so we start with that gratitude. And then before I introduce our guest speaker this evening, I have a long list of people to thank. And so, so we'll start with the folks who put this event together. And so I want to thank Dagny Walton. Dagny's way in back. She's our program coordinator. And Peggy Nesbitt, operations manager there way in the back. And then I want to thank the individuals who were involved with putting together this beautiful exhibition behind us. And that is Derek Witcherly, our collections manager. Derek is also somewhere out there in the mob. And Emily Mulvaney, our curatorial intern who worked on this project as well. And then we want to also lift up Jerry Huancorn, who is unable to be here tonight. But Jerry is the curatorial tech at the Three Chiefs Cultural Center. So, and she was obviously instrumental in the selection of the pieces that you see here, preparing them for travel and preparing them and bringing them here and installing them, helping us to put this beautiful exhibition together. And so, last but not least, I need to thank the director at the Three Chiefs Cultural Center, and this is Marie Tarosian, who will be speaking tonight. And I just want to say, I'm going to read a little bit about her bio in a second, but I just want to say a personal thank you, because from the minute I met you, it was the most welcoming exchange and openness to this idea of bringing parts of your collection, sharing not just these beautiful works of art, these historic artifacts, these things that are so important to the preservation of culture, and but also sharing this story. And this is a story that has touched me from the minute I heard it. It's a tragic story in many ways, but it's also a victorious story. It's a story of resilience and survival and the never-ending journey to preserve, to lift up art, to see it as central to our lives. So thank you, Marie, for that.
Thank you.
Marie Tarosian is, of course, director at the Three Chiefs Cultural Center up in Pablo. And prior to that, she was education director and exhibit coordinator at the People's Center, so the institution that immediately preceded this. And of course, you'll hear that story from Marie herself. And prior to that, for 12 years, you were also historical collections manager for the cultural committee, so the Salish Pend Oreille Cultural Committee. So as you can tell, she obviously has a long history with preservation of objects, preserving objects, displaying, exhibiting, and presenting these important cultural elements of the culture to the general public. And she's an alumna of Salish Kootenai College as well. So I will just turn the floor over to Marie and let her take us on this journey and explain to us why we're here tonight. And then we'll do a question and answer session immediately afterwards. And we'll have a mic and I will pass it around and take your questions from the floor.
Awesome.
Marie,
thank you. Thank you. Lem Shrafiel. Hasniok Pesia. Malilu isquestil yelman uchiscali. Chines lemti yel huasket. Chines iuti. Chines pupu senchi. My name is Marie Tarosian. I am Salish Kalispel from the Confederate Salish and Kootenai tribes. I've lived most of my life on the Flathead Reservation. I grew up learning our culture from my grandparents and my parents. You know, when you grow up and you're thinking, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to be? And I have to admit, it wasn't to be in the museum world. It was teaching or in nursing, and I get reminded that I did meet my goal when I say teaching, because that's exactly what I do at Three Chiefs. I'm honored to be here today, and I'm thankful for all of you for coming. I'm thankful for this exhibit and this chance for us to continue to tell our story. We are the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, comprised of 3 individual distinct tribes: the Bitterroot Salish, Kalispeh or Upper Pend Oreille, and the Kasanka tribe, which is their Kootenai tribe. Our Kootenai people are one tribe of 7 that go all the way up into Canada, Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and in Montana. The Bitterroot Salish, of course, our homeland is the Bitterroot Valley, all the way up through Missoula here, up into parts of Kalispell, Polson on the Flathead Reservation, and our people even travel down into the Gallatin Valley to hunt buffalo. And we have a lot of stories and connections to our ancestors in that area. Part of my job with Three Chiefs is to tell our stories of all 3 of our tribes and represent them accurately and in our words. And that's what the museum started for. Years ago, back in the 1980s, a group of tribal members got together and they decided, you try and research about a tribe and you're finding things in books, and there was hardly anything about the Salish, Kootenai, and Pend Oreille people in books. So they got together with our elders and they met with our council, and they traveled all across the United States looking at tribal museums that were already up and sharing their stories. They traveled into Washington, up into Canada, down into Denver, and took a group of tribal people with them. Clarence Woodcock was one of the ones that wanted to be able to tell our stories and be able to tell them accurately from our words. Betty White, she was the tribal member who started the People Center. It was her drive that took everybody around to try and find the right place for the People Center to be. They met with our tribal people. We had meetings that, they got together and talked about what they wanted to do. There was, all throughout our years, our ancestors, with the coming of the non-Indians into our areas and moving into our homelands, a lot of what we had started to be traded with newcomers. They were sold to newcomers. They were also gifted to the people that were here. Gifted because we were learning a new way of life. Our ancestors had to learn new things. The lives that they were accustomed to was changing drastically. And, the government wanted us to become farmers and ranchers. So these mercantiles moved into the areas, and they gave our tribal members charge accounts. Our ancestors didn't know what a charge account was way back then. It was something that they would go to the store and they were all of a sudden getting this food or getting necessities that they started to need now. Things that was making their lives happier. They didn't know in return that they had to pay for these items. But our people didn't have the money because we didn't work for money. We lived off the land. We lived off nature, fishing, hunting, trapping. And all of a sudden we're pushed into this new lifestyle that we have to adapt to. So a lot of these items were lost to mercantiles or to other farmers and ranchers, and they were taken out of the area. Beaded items like moccasins and vests and headdresses and all these beautiful items that our people learned to make. They were sold at auction, they traveled all over, and our people, we saw that. We were sad to see our ancestors' items in museums over in France or Italy or down in other museums. And the drive for this group was to try and bring those home, trying to bring them back here so that we were able to reunite what our ancestors once had back to the homeland. And that was the purpose of the People Center, Skullik Oksmuknik, which is Salish and Kootenai for people. In 1990, the People Center was established and incorporated. And we went around, I was able to be on a committee. We were going around looking for a site that would be a good site to hold this new museum culture center. And we looked at all different areas, up in the mountains, to the edge of the trees. But the site was chosen in Pablo because it was close to the highway. It still had trees surrounding it and had a nice open area. And that was the place that was chosen. So in 1993, we did groundbreaking. We had the ceremony. We prayed for the land and the coming of the new culture center. 1995, we opened our doors to the people. The People Center had a beautiful 1,200 square foot museum, a 1,200 square foot education room where we had meetings, we had activities. Anything that went on with the kids or the people was in that room. It also held exhibits on the walls. We had a beautiful rotunda when you walked into the People Center, and it was in a circular design, and that's the way it was designed for our people. The drum is in a circular, and that's the way our life goes. It's in a circle. They put out a contest for part of the design. The ceiling, the roof in that rotunda was glass, and they wanted a design on that glass. So before I was on the board, I was just on like a little committee, gathering people, going around, and they put this contest out for the design. So I kind of thought about it, and I thought, well, I could do a design. I could do something too. And I'm a bead worker. I bead, I sew, learned from my mother and my grandmother. And I decided I'm going to give this a whirl. So they give us a pattern, an octagon-shaped pattern, anybody that wanted to do the color scheme of it. So I submitted like 4 different color schemes with my explanation as to why I chose that color scheme. And the voting went to our tribal council, no names on the paper, so nobody knew who submitted what. And I won that contest. And not only was I proud of having the Culture Center, the People Center, a place to tell our stories and share our histories and our traditions, but every time I walked in that building, I knew that rotunda ceiling was me. It was a part of me. I designed them colors to represent our people, the red for our people, the white for the air, the blue for our waters, the green in there was for the mountains, and the brown in there was for our people, or the animals. And I'm sorry if I get a little emotional about things. My grandchildren, our grandchildren, grew up with me and the People Center, everything that I did. And my coworkers' grandchildren and children have grown up with the People Center. From our activities, our exhibit displays, our traveling exhibits. We worked off the reservation too with other museums and other historical societies. We took our traditions and our arts and crafts to other school children so that they could learn, so that they could know that Skellig Oksmuknik is here. And this is our homeland. And we're here. And we were sharing every part of us. The People Center, we shared how to tan a hide. Kids got to come in and scrape hides, feel the stretchiness of the buckskin afterwards, see how it transitions from a deer to scraping it to a hide to making moccasins or making a dress or even a buckskin vest. Kids got to learn how to make fry bread. It was probably one of our most popular stations. And then the dry meat station, where tribal hunters would bring in some game for us. Some of our departments and programs came to help out, showing the kids how you slice meat, how you season it and put it out on the racks. And then the kids got to take some home. And they got to taste a piece of that. They would do arts and crafts. They would hear our languages being spoken and learn something to take home with them. And most of the time it was lemlemsh, which is thank you in Salish. And that was probably the one thing every kid was running around by the end of the day. 3 days a week in September, we had Native American Awareness Days. And we did like 300 children per day running through our grounds, our museum, our by the end of that third day, my staff and our volunteers were all like, and we would take Friday off. That was our day to recoup. But come Monday, the letters start coming in from the kids, from the schools, telling us what they liked and what they enjoyed. And then your heart just would be brighter because you knew what you were doing was making an impact. What we were teaching those kids, they were learning. Made our jobs not just jobs, it was a part of our lives. You know, we were there 5 days a week, 365 days a year. Sometimes we were there 7 days, 8 days. Our celebrations, we were there a long time. And our exhibits were beautiful exhibits. Our museum told our stories of our craftsmanship, of our arts, our songs and dances, how we respect the animals, not only to feed us, but they're part of our creation story. And the whole building was just full of culture, tradition, respect. Anybody that walked through the doors was welcome. Anybody that left that day always came back for something. You know, I have so many memories. I came there in 2003 as the education director. You know, as budgets go along the years, things get cut back and things get cut back. Well, we lost a couple staff, and then I had to take on the exhibit development portion of that. So as exhibit developer, working with another lady from our preservation department who took care of the artifacts, that was her job, curation. So I learned how to accession. I learned how to document. I learned even how, when somebody walks in something and says, oh, you know, these are part of our family, and we've had them from years, and I don't even really know where they came from, but we want you to have them. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is so cool. And our curator that day, she comes and she says, Marie, did you get a provenance for this? Did you get, and I'm going, what's provenance? I remember that word always, and I'll always remember Leslie Kellawat for that. She was stern, but she was full of spunk and heart for her culture as well. And she taught me a lot while she was there. And I learned the importance of making sure that you know where these items come from and that they're being gifted to you legally and following all the protocols. So I've been there since 2003. In 2015, I was promoted to director after our director, Lucy Vandenberg, retired. My boss said he felt like all the years that I've worked at the Culture Committee, 13 years at the Culture Committee, taking care of the collections there and the photographs and the displays, that he felt that I had earned that job. And at first I didn't think I could do it. I thought, oh, I don't know, that's a lot of work. I just want to continue to do exhibits and develop them and display them. And my husband and my mother just rode me hard. You can do it. I know you can do it. We've watched you. And so I took it. I said, okay, I'm gonna try this. And I'm grateful, very grateful that I stepped into those shoes and took over directing of the Culture Center. You know, COVID hit in 2020. We had all these years of all these fun activities, these learning activities, and meeting people from all over the country, not just the United States. I kept track. I kept a sign-in sheet of everybody that walked through the door. Tell me where you're from. How did you hear about us? And it was just amazing to hear where everybody came from. The tour groups that would come in these big buses. And I loved seeing all the buses lined up out in that big parking lot that we had. It was a joy. It was a joy, you know, and then COVID hit like in February of 2020. And right away, because nobody knew really what it was, and it was taking lives, everything was shutting down. So the People Center, we shut down. The tribe shut us down. And once a week, my staff and I, as long, you know, we check on each other. Nope, I'm feeling good. I have no symptoms. I'm going in. We'd pick one day and we'd go to the People Center just to check on things, make sure everything was okay. And one of those times we went there, there was a young man out back, and I had this talking circle built in the back there. It had logs that people could sit on and rocks, a rock pit for burning fires. And we had people come there all the time that would sit and talk with the kids, tell them stories. Actors that were visiting in the area came and sat there and talked to the kids about how they got into acting and the importance of education before you get to acting. I went to my office, and it was in the back of the center there, and I happened to look, and there was this man out there, and he's stacking rocks. And he's got it about knee-high in a circle. And I'm going, what is he doing? So I called my staff over, and I said, do you guys know who this guy is? And they're all looking, and they go, no. I said, well, you guys stand right here. One of you come and stand with me. I'm going to go see what he's up to. So I walked out there and met him. He introduced himself. And I asked, what are you doing? This is tribal property. It's part of the museum. And he said, yeah, I know. He said, I decided to come here. He said, I have nothing to do. He was sad that he had lost the custody of his children, separated from his wife. And he said, I know my children came here because they told me about it. And they learned how to play shinny. They learned how to make mini teepees. He said, I just want to give back. All these rocks he would carry from over the hill from the People Center, and he'd bring them back, and he was stacking them up. He said, I just want to give thanks to the center and give your prayer area a better area for prayer. He said, from me. And I said, okay, I understand what you're doing, and I'll allow it. It's like 90 degrees out. It was mid-August. And I said, I've got a water spigot over here. You're more than welcome to go and cool down and get water from there anytime you want. And that was our meeting. 2 weeks later, we were opening back up for business. And, we had all these protocols and of everything that people had to do to come and go. So we were taking care of all of that. And I did see him out there again one more time. And then I didn't pay attention to him after that because we started to get busy, back in the groove of trying to figure out how we can operate without having the rooms full and having the activities that we were used to unless they were outside. So Labor Day was coming up. Friday we came to work, did everything, and end of the day we were all leaving, and Jerry and Aggie, they were the last two out. We went home. Well, that Sunday, I'd cooked a dinner at the house, and we were eating, and my uncle called. So my husband gave me the phone, and he says, hey, Marie, I just heard on the scanner that there's smoke coming out of the People Center, and that fire trucks are responding. And I'm going, what? No way, no. And he said, yeah. He says, yeah, it's on the scanner now. So I hung up the phone, and I told my husband, we got to go, we got to get to Pablo, and I'm trying on my phone to call everybody. I'm trying to call my boss. I'm trying to call council people, trying to call my staff that lived in the area. And I was getting nobody. It's a holiday. Everybody's gone doing things. And I couldn't get my husband to drive fast enough for me. I know if I was driving, I'd have probably been pulled over several times, but I was so nervous. I was so scared. The closer we got to Pablo, I could feel my heart just racing, and finally got through to one of my staff, and I said, you've got to go check on the People Center. They said there's ambulance and everybody there. There's a fire. I need to know. And she called back, and she said, Marie, you just got to get here. You got to get here. So as we pull up to the People Center, it's a divided highway with a turn into the People Center. When my husband turned into there, it was like, oh my God, there was just lights flashing and cops and fire trucks, and I could see smoke coming out of the top, and my heart just felt like it was going to stop. And I told him, hurry up, and we crossed the street, and the police stopped us, and I just opened the door and ran. I just ran to the building, and He told him, he said, my wife works here, and they recognized me, the tribal officer. So we got up to the building, and I was running around trying to find the fire department, the fire guys. They had all, their equipment out working, and I told him, you got to save these two parts of the building. I showed him where the museum was. I said, you have to save this building. This room is our museum. Do whatever you can to save this. And I ran to the back and I said, this is our repository. Everything that's not on display is in this room. You have to save it. Please, you've got to save it. And they were doing their best. We had fire departments from Arley, Charlotte, Ronan, Polson, Pablo volunteer fire departments, even the fire department up in Dayton, Chief Cliff. They were all there doing their best. One of the most unfortunate things about Pablo is their water. It's not what you need for fire hydrants, every so down the road. These fire trucks would put out all the water that they could, and then they would leave. They were just going in, like this big circle. They'd have to leave and go fill up and come back, go fill up and come back. And they worked hard. They worked very hard, and my staff finally showed up, and some of the council people and my boss, everybody starts showing up. They start getting the messages, and the arsonist broke into our building and barricaded all the doors. The fire department could not get the doors to budge. They couldn't get them to open. They had my coworker's key, and they said they'd unlock the doors, but they couldn't get him to budge. They didn't know what's going on. And then we were going around the building trying to figure things out. Well, one of the firemen came up to me and said, we need to break into this back part of the building in this corner. And I said, oh, you guys, I said, that's where the artifacts are. That's the room I want you to save. And he said, we have to get in there because according to their instruments, that was the hottest part of the building. And I just cried because I knew that it was on fire. So I told him, do what you have to, just get in there. And they used this bucket, and they were just beating on the building. And the building is all brick. It's all these huge brick all the way around. And, they fought hard. We stood there and we watched them, and they fought, and they fought. And they finally got an opening, and you could see the heat and everything come out, and they were just put the hoses in there and just kept it going. And they finally got the back doors open on the north end of the building. That was our rear entrance. So we ran around over there, and he said, we've got the doors open, and they had their lights on, and I said, it's that next door you have to, that's the repository, that's where everything is. When they finally opened that door, because our key finally worked on one door, I could see that my worst fear was coming true. I knew that that room had been damaged and everything in it. Working there for 13 years, not even as the curator, but the exhibit coordinator and education director, you kind of know what's in there because you've worked with it. Beaded bags, beaded moccasins, headdresses, old historic drums, handmade drums. All was lost. I kept thinking it's gone, and I just remember collapsing to my knees and crying because I was hurt and I was angry. All of my staff, we were broken. I felt like I had let my ancestors down, that I didn't protect it like it should have been protected. The security system failed as well because this young man that broke into the building was in there for over an hour starting fires. He started 7 fires inside the building, broke into the repository, cut himself, and this is all based on the video, which I begged them to let me watch. I just have to see, you got to let me see what happened and not just tell me. But they wouldn't let me. They just said it was for my best interest and my heart and my thoughts, that they just didn't want me seeing everything that was taking place in there. I'm thankful today that they held their grounds and didn't let me watch that. The heartache of knowing what happened inside alone has been hard to deal with. September 6th is a day we'll never forget, but we've learned to move on. Lucy Charlot, she's a descendant of Chief Charlot. She's our our gift shop manager and my administrative assistant. She's been there a few years less than I have. She came in as an SKC student intern. We convinced her to stay. And Jerry Huoncorn is our curation technician. She had just came on the job not too long before the fire and was just learning things and did an inventory. Aggie Inkashola, she also came on as our education coordinator and was in charge of doing classes. And we had some awesome classes there with, learning the language at the same time they're learning our crafts. Young kids that we were doing this with. After the fire, everybody started going home, and it was just, I couldn't leave. I just stayed there. I was the last one there after everybody's leaving, other than the fire department, my husband and I. And I just said, I can't go. I've got to just see. We were sitting in front of the building, and we had this little rock wall that people would sit on, and there's traditional plants in the planter. And we were sitting there talking, and the fire department guys, they came over, and one of them guys said, we're going to have you guys step away. The fire has gotten into the ceiling, and we can't get to it. And it's like, oh, yeah, so we got to get up and move. We no sooner moved from there, and you'll see in the video and the pictures where the smoke, glass started to pop, and I realized it was my design in the rotunda, and the glass around was popping from the heat. And then the smoke just billowed out like nothing. It was just, all you could do was stand there and watch. And that's what we did. Arnold and I finally left about 8 in the morning. We decided to go, and they were just kind of finishing up things and wouldn't let us into the building. So we went home, freshened up, and I said, I got to go right back. And we're like 20 miles away from where we live to the center. So we came back, and then my staff, everybody started to come back again, and people started to come. They wanted to help, just community members, other tribal employees, and programs. It was full. You looked around, and there was people all over, 3 times as amount that's in here now. And they all were there ready to help. What can I do? What can I do? And I said, I need to see when we can get in the building. And so I talked to the fire chief, and he said, we need to go in first. We got the insurance guys here. We're going to check the structure first and know if it's okay for you guys to go in. Finally, they came out and they said, okay, it's clear. I want to let you know that your museum survived. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I turned around and I told my workers, we're going in first. And so I asked him, you need to let us go in first, and then we'll let everybody else come in that's come to help. So they let us in, and we walked into the building, and we could just see the devastation. The ceiling was crumpled on top of the gift shop. There were no doors to where our offices was. We could just see things that were fallen. And the rotunda was just burned. Gift shop was burned badly and gone. So we walked through the door that was still standing for the museum, opened those up, and we walked in, and it was just like, oh my gosh. I could see buckskin dresses. I could see the beaded buckskin vests. I can see moccasins. I can see our bear. And we all started to cry. It was like tears of joy and sadness at the same time. We got to go in there and we looked and we could see, the smoke and the water stains on the glass that was protecting our exhibits. So we went back and told everybody they could start coming in. And what they did immediately was form this line, and there were tarps. While we were inside, they laid out tarps on the ground, and then somebody had pulled in a truck with a trailer, and they came in, and I said, please let us handle the objects, and I'll tell you what to do with them as we grab them. So that's what we did. We would start one area and move around. And it was just like this little triage happening. Would pick up something, pass it to the next one. They'd walk and pass it to the next one. All the way out the door. And then somebody would carefully take it and lay it in place on top of a tarp. And we did this until that whole room was emptied. And we went across the hall to the education room, which was also intact. Water, soot damage, but we had historic photos in there. We had just, 2 years prior to the fire, the tribe purchased the Doug Allard collection. We went to auction down in Arizona, and we got like 96% of the collection that he put up for auction. We got outbid on some items that went elsewhere. But those items were in the museum and the repository, along with the photos that we purchased from his estate. And, we just started this, I don't even know what to call it, because I don't know where the strength came from. At that point, I kept thinking, I'm tired, I'm sick, I'm mad, and I'm hurt. And each one of my staff felt the same way. But we kept going, and we moved everything to the SKC, Joe McDonald room. They gave us that whole room, and we set up tables, and people just came and they just took over. And everybody kept telling me, you got to call this woman, here's her number. And I was getting text messages and phone calls, and call this woman, she'll know what to do to help you. And she put me in touch with a lady in Washington, D.C., and they were helping. They sent us some funds to help buy the supplies that we needed to take care of all the artifacts that survived. Everything from stuffing tissue paper in to keep things from wrinkling, and because how things, when they get wet and they just start to, that's what we were trying to keep from happening for a lot of the artifacts, the moccasins and the beaded bags, and even the dresses, puffing them up so that they wouldn't crinkle. And it was so cool to see how everybody came together, how everybody came to help us with this. And I just felt the love from everybody. One day we were sitting there in the building, you could see somebody over here, they had their paper and they're documenting. Another person's photographing, and they're matching the photograph with the photograph number with their document. And then they'd put the document with whatever the item was, so that we could use those to try and match them up with the records that did survive. And it was cool, to see the people that came together to help. So I got on the phone and I called the number that they gave me. They said, you've got to call this lady, she'll know what to do. And her name is Nancy Fonicello. And my first thought was, that is such an awesome name, Fonicello. I love that. Now I love Nancy Fonicello. I do, with all of my heart. I called her, told her what happened, told her who I am, and she says, I will be there tomorrow. And she lives down in Wilsall, I never even heard of the town of Wilsall till she came around. But she just took over. She guided us, she supported us all through this whole thing. We contracted with her to be our lead conservator. She found 3 other people to help out. Jack Lyons, I think he's out of Kalispell, I'm sorry. But he conserves wood that's been damaged in any way. We have a historic bench that came from the Jocko Church, the first church that burned. When they were renovating it, they pulled everything out. Well, the church burned, but a lot of the stuff survived. So the fathers were selling some of this stuff, to help recoup rebuilding their church. So some of the tribal people had bought these benches. One gentleman had decided he wanted us to have this bench, so he donated it to us. Chalky Kershane, tribal member, lived in Washington, drove it all the way over here so that we could have it in our museum. Jack Lyons repaired that, and it looks beautiful. You can't tell that it was damaged by soot. And soot can damage so fast. I didn't realize if you brush it off too fast or too whatever, it's going to damage whatever it's on. And if you leave it on there too long, it damages. So Jack Lyons took care of that bench. He also took care of 2 really beautiful wood and glass showcases that were in the education room that had been donated. We didn't quite get them into the museum yet, but they survived the fire, so we still have them today. And then Joe Abrasia out of Kalispell. He's a well-known art restoration curator. We had many paintings. When you walked into the building, we had paintings all the way around the rotunda, and they were of our chiefs and sub-chiefs, but they didn't all survive. The arsonist had taken them off the wall and had actually just placed them wherever. So the ones that survived, thank goodness, I'm glad he took them down because we did get some that survived. He refinished those. There were some that he couldn't because he said every time he'd try and get the soot off, it was taking away the paint. So in the photographs that I've got in there, you can see one of the paintings that he restored, Agnes Kenmill, and some of the beautiful artwork that he did repair for us will go back on display once we're in a building that can house the paintings. And then we have Jennifer McGlichny Sexton. She's from Colorado, and she is a trained curator for conservation care of photographs, negatives, and historic papers. She took all of that. She came over and she just started showing us how they needed to go into protective sleeves, and you put the tissue paper in between, and document what's in the box. And we were doing all of this, and something kept pulling me back to the People Center. I kept telling my husband, I just got to go back and see if I can find anything else. Because we spent days, my staff and I and others, digging through the soot in the repository. And we found items that were not burned, that, thank goodness, when everything collapsed, it just gave it a cushion on top, soaked in water. But a lot of these items, we were starting to pull those out and lay them out on the back lawn. And Nancy said, don't put them in the sun. You got to keep them in the shade. You don't want that sun damaging them anymore. So that's what we did. We started pulling things out. And then I realized something. One day I told my husband, my grandma's photo collection was in my office. A big box full of photos, several boxes full of negatives that had already been curated and accessioned, and I had them in my office because I was making record of what was there, was going to get them in for copies for the rest of our family, and then make a donation to Three Chiefs or to the People Center. Well, it didn't happen, and then it just broke my heart, and I told my husband, I can't tell my mom. I can't tell my mom that's where they were. But we have to go back. And my office had just collapsed. Everything in there had burned. And we jumped in there with our muck boots and shovel in hand. And I told him there was a bookshelf right there on that wall. And I'm sure that's where it were. They were on there. So we dug and dug and dug, and he finally found them. And they were wet, soaked. So I took all this stuff home, and I called the curator. I said, what do I do with these? How do I take care of these? They're wet. And she said, put them in the freezer. Don't do anything with them. Put them in the freezer right now. I will deal with it. So that's what we did. And now she has those. She'll be bringing those home either mid or late March. And she's already sent us pictures of her work, what she's been doing, and how she's been taking care of them. And I finally had the courage to tell my mom. That was probably one of the hardest things, because I thought, she's going to be angry and she's going to be hurt as much as I was. This is all my grandmother's family, her family, my family. Pictures of when my grandmother was little. And I told her what happened, and she nodded her head, and she goes, okay. And I said, but they're with the conservator, and she's going to take care of them and try and restore what she can. And she nodded her head, and she goes, okay. She says, are you okay? And I looked at her, and I said, you're going to make me cry. But she says, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And it was like, oh, I love my mother and her teachings and what she shares with us. We started trying to rebuild and think, what do we need to do next? Everything got boxed up and put into storage. 9 Pipes stepped up and said, we have a vault. You can put everything in our vault. We'll hold it for you as long as you need. So we did. We took them up on that. We tried to pay them for their time in the vault, and they wouldn't take it. They said, no, that's what we're here for. So we put everything there, and every day I'd drive to Pablo with my little box. I called it my office. All my papers, my laptop computer, everything was in there. I'd drive by and I'd look at this building along the highway, and I told my husband one day, I said, you know, I don't know what Stuart Morton's going to do with that building. It's in the old Allard complex, and Stuart Morton owned it. And I said, it's just been empty. Every time I drive by, it's like it's calling to me. I just look at it. And so he said, I'll ask him. Next time, he said, I'm going up tomorrow to get my work done on my truck, because he owned the service station or the repair shop there. And he went and talked to him, and he looked at Arnold, and he goes, you tell her to call me right now. So I did. I was like, yeah, hey. So he leased the building to us. He said, it's yours. We're going to work it out. So we spent, 3 years there, almost 3 years. We moved in, and we just started to get ourselves set up again. We had a museum in what was the old bar. We had them renovate it, and so that was our museum. We had the other portion that was the restaurant portion was our gift shop and our little office and kitchen in the back. Downstairs was our curation care area, offices, and an education room. And we finally start feeling like it was a little bit normal. You know, we were having kids come. We were having buses stop, which was good for all of us on Allard Complex there, that come to our museum and shop and with us, and then go next door and get drinks or gas or whatever. And it was a nice fit. And I'm thankful for Morton and Kaufman for that time that we had in their building. But we outgrew it really fast. And Nancy continued taking things home, you know, so much at a time back to Wilsall to work on, and then bring it back. And we started thinking, we can't be bringing him back into this building. There's no fire suppression in this building either. And it's a log building. And it was old, and it needed some work. So I went to my boss, and I said, we need something else. This just isn't going to work. I need to find some place to start bringing everything, because we can't put it back in the same vault with the stuff that's still damaged because of the smoke and the odor, everything. So I got on the phone, and I was emailing and calling people, Idaho, Washington, Montana, Oregon, North Dakota, trying to find somebody that had a vault we could use for all of our artifacts. And everybody was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, we just don't have anything. And so I was working with Montana Historical Society, and they were going to help me work to try and find a, you know, like those big train car things. I guess they now can make those into storage units with special HVAC systems and stuff. And so that's where we were headed. And then Molly Kruckenberg from the Historical Society called, and she goes, you know, Marie, we have so much space in one of our storage units here. She goes, we're going to give you some shelf space. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? So everything that's been coming home, that's been restored and repaired, goes into storage at Montana Historical Society's warehouse, one of their warehouses. And they, in turn, would not take money for that. It was just a MOU that we're going to let you keep your stuff there. You keep the insurance. You come anytime you want, whatever. So, you know, my list of thanks just goes on. And I don't know what else to do to give back other than to volunteer for them when they need it. And that's what I'm doing with the Historical Society. I'm part of what they call their stakeholders group, because they're building a new heritage center. And I'm blessed to be a part of that. It's helping design those exhibits that pertain to Salish, Kootenai, and Pend Oreille. And that's my volunteer time to help. Not only help them tell our story accurately and correctly, but also see how they're doing that and to help us do the same. So we are recovering. You know, and I don't even know if the word is easier, but it gets a little easier to talk about the more I talk about it. Right after the fire, everybody had questions, and it was questions. It was like my staff had come to me, and they're in tears. I can't answer their questions anymore. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. And I said, I know. You know, I'll go down and talk. So we put up an exhibit at the center there in Mission that talked about that and just explained to people that this is what happened and these are our thoughts. And a big part of our thoughts was, this is hard for us to talk about. Give us some time, we need to heal. And it was very well taken. We'd get people to come out and talk to the staff and say, oh, I'm so sorry, and I won't ask you any questions, but can I hug you? I was like, yes. Even my gift shop lady's not a hugger. She would just go. So during all this transitioning and rebuilding, I sat with my staff one day and I said, I believe that part of our healing has to release. We have to let go. We have to be able to heal our hearts by putting things behind us. Not ever forgetting. It'll always be part of us, our life, our story, but we have to learn how to live with it and how to move on if we want to stay in our jobs and if we want to stay here and do that. I truly believe that our strength in each one of us came from our ancestors. We had elders come to us that prayed with us. We had elders come to the site where the fire was, the building, and pray for the building. And there were so many prayers for us. I know I felt those prayers. It helped me get up every day and go back because I knew that for my ancestors, our ancestors, that I had to go back and finish this job. I have to go back and make sure every artifact is taken care of properly, that our collections management program is being rebuilt properly, and that our building is built. It's been a slow process trying to get to the point of where we're going to design this and build a new building, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it. I told my tribal council at the quarterly report that we're ready to move forward. Now we just need the tools. Part of the tools come from you, and we have thoughts and designs in our head that we want met. So I was like, all right, everybody on council, let's do it. They assigned a lady to work with us, and we're getting the ball rolling. And I said, 5 years, I want to be in my new building. We'll see. I also want to tell you about how we chose our name. I told my staff that, we are Salish, Kalispeh, Kasenka. We are, in our roles, I believe that each one of us are deserving to have that title or representation of a chief. Our resilience has proved it. Everything we've done has proved it. We need a title now that represents all three of our tribes. And I wanted people to know that 3 chiefs comes from 3 of our tribes, or 3 of our chiefs. Chief Charlo of the Bitterroot Salish, Chief Alexander of the Kalispeh, and Chief Kustada for the Kootenai, for the Kasenka. All of our chiefs are important, and it was hard to choose just one to represent each. But everybody wants a picture. They want a picture or a design to go with the name. So these are the chiefs that we chose because of their work for our tribes, for our people. And so it's an honor to hold that name, 3 Chiefs Cultural Center. Yeah. And I'm just really thankful for everybody, the fire departments, the ambulance crew, the police department, all the people in the community, even out of Missoula and Kalispell that came to help us. And it's all their strength that has helped us to get where we are today. The pictures that I put up in the room here, I added some more pictures on the counter. Please take time to look. It's going to show you a before and after picture. There'll be some gauntlets. They'll show how damaged they were with the soot. And then an after picture after the curation, conservation work on them, buckskin dresses. Chief Charlot's vest that was donated to us. Sub-Chief Arlee's vest. And they were on exhibit, so they survived the fire. And the owners, the 2 grandsons that donated them to us, came to visit us after we moved to St. Ignatius, and they were able to see the vests. And one of the boys goes, geez, that looks better than it did when we first donated it. You know, I've learned a lot about curation care and conservation care and of artifacts. Nancy Fonicello has taught us some tricks of the trade. We have a Alaskan blonde grizzly that was donated to us. Our elders, I take it to the elders anytime we get things that are not from our culture to see if it's okay if we accept or if they want to move or move on. So I talked to them about this blonde grizzly and I showed them. And I said, you know, it was hunted up in Alaska and brought down here, and the guy's just had it in his garage and now he wants to donate it. And our elders, both culture committees, told us that it was important to give this bear a home because it is part of who we are and we need to take care of it. So I wrote that in my letter to the guy who was donating it, and that we would put it in our museum and use it as an educational piece to talk about the importance of grizzly bears. He called me up like a month later and said him and his wife decided it should go to us. That bear survived the fire. He was covered in soot, really bad. So she came here and spent a week here cleaning him, and then she'd leave and come back like 2 weeks later and clean him some more. So we were asking her, what are you using? Because she had us using 100% alcohol and cotton swabs on like the moccasins. And she says, oh, you're not going to believe me when I tell you. I said, well, what are you using? She says, my local liquor store thinks I'm an alcoholic. Because I keep going back for pints of Everclear. And that's her secret that got that bear looking so bright again. And then the drum, we worked endlessly on that drum, you know, trying to get them little swabs going to try and clean everything. And she comes down one time and she goes, you know, instead of having to dip this all the time and make sure that it's at a certain you have to make sure it's not too wet and not too dry. Well, she took a couple of swabs and spit on it, and then she goes, and holy moly, you should have saw how clean that circle got. So that when we say a lot of our spit went into that cleaning, it's the truth. So, you know, there's a happy ending to all of this. And the happy ending is seeing these artifacts in this exhibit, that they're alive still. The artifacts that are down in Helena in storage and those that are coming home. We're going to have a coming home celebration and an open house up at Three Chiefs when everything's back and ready for display again. And we will publicize it, we'll let everybody know because we want to have, you know, a round dance to celebrate that. And I'm just so proud of my staff for sticking with me and by me through all of this. And thankful for all of you guys for being here, and Raphael and everybody for allowing us to have our exhibit here to continue to tell our story. Our stories is what, you know, passes down from generation to generation, and that's how we've learned, and we'll continue to learn and we'll continue to share, and we'll continue to be here. We're here. We're always going to be here. Shehoy, lem lem shpesia. Thank you. Thank you.
This People Center that then became the Three Chiefs Center could not have had a better steward, a better leader, a visionary person. So thank you very much for
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So are there any questions for Marie Tarosian? Anybody have a question? I'll bring the mic to you.
And if you don't, that's okay.
So would you like to say something about where you're currently at and how that
Yes, yes, thank you. We are currently back in Pablo. We are a few miles down south from where the People Center was. We are in the old Glacier Bank building. We are on Major Hool Road, and I have a picture in there. You can see our beautiful bank building, and it's been renovated downstairs. The vaults have been renovated. Fire suppression has been installed. That was the first request I had on renovation. And yeah, we're happy to be there. The only problem we have is people knowing where to turn, how to get there if you're going north. You have to turn by Pablo IGA first onto Pablo West Road and then onto, I can't remember the secondary road, but anyway to Major Hool Road. And then when you're coming south, it's a direct turn off. But we're working with the highway department on signage so that we can get some better signs. I used to have some small signs up that was telling people to turn here as they're coming south. But the highway department is very sticky about where these signs are. And they didn't even give them back to me, they just took them down. But now we're working with them to see where we can put our signs and get better signage.
I read in there on one of the exhibits that you held like a prayer service
Yes,
and you prayed for the person that
yes.
started the fire. My question is, how long did it take you to get to that point where you could pray for that person?
Good question, thank you. You know, as Khalif Aksmaknik, we're taught to pray for everything and everyone. We pray for the sunrise, we pray and we're thankful to Creator that we are awake today, and we pray to Creator that we're thankful for the day and what we have. When we learned that the suspected arsonist died inside the fire, we stood there and, you know, at first it was like, oh my gosh, you know, and it was hard to explain how we felt because our anger was still there that this person just built or burnt what we had. But then I turned to my boss and I said, we have to pray for him. We have to pray for his life because he has a mother, he has children, and that's what we prayed for. Our councilwoman, Carol, was standing with us and she led us in prayer. We prayed for this man's soul. We prayed for his children and his family. We prayed for our hearts to be able to forgive him. And that took a while. I'll be honest about that. It took a while to be able to forgive him for his actions. We were standing there on the lawn when they removed his body in the bag from the room where he died. I did speak to a sheriff's officer not too long after, and you know, I asked him, this young man had been an arsonist in the area for a while, and he was getting caught burning things, and they'd arrest him, and he'd be bonded out right away before they could do anything. The same day that he started the fires in the People Center, he actually started a fire at the old mill that was shut down. And they were looking for him at that point. And that's when he ran and got, you know, access into the People Center. He had told the sheriff one time when he was arrested, when they were interviewing him, why are you starting these fires? And he said, because I have to. It's the only way I can be safe. He was having mental problems. He kept saying that demons were after him. Somebody was after him, and the only way to keep him away is if he built the fire to keep them away. So yeah, I still pray for him. and especially for his mom. You know, I just can't imagine what she's gone through. And he wasn't from this area. Him and his family were from the Potawatomi tribe back east. So we're all taught, you know, at a young age to pray for others. And so that was why the first thing that we had to do was pray for him. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Are you thinking about building on the same place?
No, the question was are we considering rebuilding at the same location? And no, we're not. When we went to council about a month after the fire and talked to them about how we felt and what we've been going through, and we asked them to not rebuild us there because of the way the fire happened. This young man lost his life in that building, and we knew where they removed him from. And no matter how they redesigned the floor, you know, they could move the gift shop over that way, or they could move whatever. We know where he laid and died. And we just couldn't do that. We all told our tribal council, if you build it back there, we will not come back to work. Yes.
Will the new Three Chiefs Cultural Center have a powwow grounds too?
That's on our list, yes. Yes, we want to be able to continue to hold our celebrations and powwows there and all of our events on the outside. So that is a part of our dream, is to have a small auditorium so we can show all of our videos and our historic stories that have been recorded by our elders, and then an outside area where people will be able to walk and, you know, have historical signs up on a walking path where they can continue to learn about our people on the walking path, and a museum twice the size of what we had. And one of the grants, I forgot to mention, you know, we had three grants. One from IMLS that helped fund us to rebuild our collections management program. That includes rewriting our policies to address how we care for our artifacts, and all of the work and how to get our Past Perfect program up and running, and buying necessary supplies, archival supplies. And then another grant we got from the Montana History Foundation to buy shelving, archival safe shelving. And then the Annenberg is a family that stopped to visit and heard our story, and they made a contribution to help with rebuilding efforts. So we chose to use those funds to hit the auction sites and purchase back some of our artifacts. Yeah. So that's what we're going to continue to do. Yeah.
Any other questions? I have a quick question. There is a donation box in the back
Yes.
room, and how else can we help?
We are going to start a fundraising campaign to help rebuild the Three Chiefs. So we will make sure that we get that out, and it would be awesome if you guys could share that information and you know, be a part of our media sources out there to get the word out and invite people to come and see us and continue to hear our story to help us rebuild. Yep.
Well, thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.